Good evening, Canby, and welcome to the Canby Urban Renewal Agency special meeting of March 12th, 2014, the first meeting of the year that starts while the sun's still up, and everybody's glad tonight. Please rise with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now a moment of silence for all those that serve our country in harm's way. Thank you. Please be seated. First on the agenda tonight, we have approval of the minutes from March 12th and 19th, 2014, the consent agenda. We need a motion.
Chairman Dale, I move to approve the consent agenda, which includes the minutes from the February 12th and 19th, 2014 meeting.
And is there a second?
Second.
Same by, it's been moved by Vice Chairman Hodson and seconded by Commissioner Hensley to approve the consent agenda, which is the approval of the minutes from February 12th and 19th, 2014. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And carries 7-0. Next, we have citizen input and community announcements. Sue, any announcements?
Just two, there will be some special public swims during spring break at the Canby Swim Center, and these will be held 1 to 3 p.m. March 20th, 21st, and the entire week of spring break, 24th through the 28th. There will not be any swimming lessons during spring break. And with spring just around the corner, that means city parks will be busy with activity. And we get a lot of calls this time of year about wanting to use city parks, and we just ask that before planning an event, they check with Canby Kids on sports schedules, because they do use Maple Street, Legacy Park, and Canby Community Park. So if you have questions on that, you can call Canby Kids at 503-266-5437, or you can email them at canbykids@canby.com.
All right, thank you, Sue. And this is our first opportunity for any citizen input on anything that's not on the agenda tonight. Do we have any citizen input at this point? All right, seeing none, we'll move on. Next, we go to resolutions. First resolution is URR 14-001, appointing the director of the Canby Urban Renewal Agency. As everyone knows, they've read in the paper, our former Urban Renewal Administrator, Greg Ellis, has gone on to take a job with the state government. And so we need to appoint a new interim director of the Canby Urban Renewal Agency. I've asked Amanda Zyber if she would fill that role for us. She very graciously said yes, and so we need to make that official tonight. And to do that, I need a motion.
Mr. Dale, or Chairman Dale, I move to approve resolution number URR 14-001, a resolution of the Canby Urban Renewal Agency appointing the director of the Canby Urban Renewal Agency.
And Mr. Chair, I second that before she changes her mind.
Very good.
Mr. Chair, I have just one quick question about the verbiage.
All righty.
The word interim isn't in it. I'm just wondering if it has to be, or if it's just one of those things that we know what we're talking about.
It is in the third whereas, and at this point, I look up at Sue
Oh, it is in the whereas.
Yeah,
and
it's in the
say,
whereas.
we're
It's in
okay
the
there?
whereases, so we're good.
We're all covered under the
Okay,
whereas.
that's
We're
all I
okay
needed to
there?
know.
Thank you. All righty, it's been moved by Vice Chairman Hodson and seconded by Commissioner Parker for Resolution URR 14-001, a resolution of the Canby Urban Renewal Agency appointing the director of the Canby Urban Renewal Agency. Is there any more discussion? All righty, all those in favor say aye. Aye. And opposed? Carries 7-0. Thank you. Next up, we have URR 14-02, authorizing a personal services agreement with Beery, Elsner, and Hammond, LLP, for legal services for the Canby Urban Renewal Agency. They are allegedly not connected events, but shortly about the time Mr. Ellis announced he was moving on to Salem, our attorney for the Urban Renewal Agency decided to up and retire. And that was Jeanette Lawner, who gave us many years of just great service. And the agency asked that myself and our city attorney, Joe Lindsay, and our now interim administrator, Amanda Zeiber, interview candidates that Jeanette Lawner recommended as being experts in the urban renewal field, and candidates that she felt had a good, solid track record and was glad to recommend. So we interviewed those people, and out of there, we did select the Beery, Elsner, and Hammond agency. We just felt like they brought a level of expertise and a depth of knowledge and a good team breadth to the table. The city's had previous experience with them, all of it good. They also have for many years represented Canby Utility with good, solid experience there. I've distributed ahead of time the biographies of the lead lawyers, which will be Pam Beery and Chad Jacobs, to the commissioners, as well as a synopsis of the firm itself. So they've had that information for 4 or 5 days since we completed the interviews. So to get the discussion going, I do need a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve Resolution URR 14-002, authorizing a personal services agreement with Beery, Elsner, and Hammond LLP for legal services for the Canby Urban Renewal Agency.
I'll second that.
And we have a second.
Who's my second? Commissioner Coleman.
So it has been moved by Commissioner Hensley, seconded by Commissioner Coleman for resolution number URR 14-002, a resolution of the Canby Urban Renewal Agency authorizing a personal services agreement with Beery, Elsner, and Hammond LLP for legal services for the Canby Urban Renewal Agency. Any more discussion? Thoughts anyone wants to share?
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to say how much I appreciate how rapidly you got on this and the method that you went through it, and I think you've got the right one.
Super.
So thank you.
Any other thoughts, discussion? Thank you. Ready for the vote?
Yep.
All righty, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0, and that concludes resolutions. We now move on to number 5, new business, and first up, we have a facade application for the Davies Clinic, and that will be Janie? All righty.
Jimmy Stickle, Main Street Manager, and I have Dr. Deona Bridgman from the Davies Clinic. The clinic is currently located at 345 North Grant Street. Dr. Bridgman has recently purchased the practice, and she submitted an application for facade improvement grant up to $25,000. She intends to have her building painted in a paint color that complements the nearby Andrus building. She's on North Grant, the Andrus building is on 3rd. The proposed facade improvement project includes the following: replacing windows, changing the roof trim, adding a metal porch roof, adding fascia board, replacing siding, expanding the wrap to the lower portion of the posts in the front, and replacing the front door. The planning director took a look at our application and has determined that it fits within the Canby design guidelines, and the Main Street Design Committee also took a look at the application, and some of their thoughts were that they liked the design concept, look forward to having it completed, agreed with their choice of colors, it's complementary with the building shape and design, and that it just looks good and would be a great improvement. So I'm just going to turn it over to Dr. Bridgman. So if you want to just say, any timeline and
Certainly. We did a massive remodel on the interior of the building, and we have been shocking our patients as they walk in and to see the new remodel because the outside doesn't look any different, and it just needs a little bit of update there. So we're going to have sort of a craftsman style to the outside. I do want to make a correction, if I may. There probably won't be a metal roof. It's just the metal trim on the roof will be replaced. But one of the major advantages is replacing the front door. It'll swing out, so we won't be knocking people over as they come in, and it will have an automatic opener. So we can hit a button, it opens for folks that need extra assistance getting through the doorway. We have estimates from 3 different contractors. We've selected the contractor we're pleased with, and he's all ready to begin as soon as we get permission. And then it will be somewhat delayed, or as soon as we get your approval to go ahead with the grant. It will be done in steps based on the weather and timing. It's going to be difficult for us to close our doors for 4 days to replace the concrete sidewalk going in, although that's not part of this grant, that is part of the project, and also replacing the front door. So they're going to work on weekends and holidays for us in order to accommodate that, but there will be a day where we'll have to go in through our back door, so that will be a little bit tricky. So we're going to try and time that with good weather.
Very good. Okay. Other comments?
Just appreciate how you're going after it. That's exciting.
Great project.
Yeah, I appreciate that you're doing this. That area I like to call our park blocks, and I really see that being prime for redevelopment. So let's hope that this is the start of some rolling thunder around the park.
Well, we are very excited too in that because of the remodels that we've been able to do and some of the new things we've been able to do within the clinic, we have been able to recruit a new physician because Dr. Davies is about to retire. And that's been very exciting that we're going to be able to be strong and be there and continue to take care of those kids that fall off the slide and walk in.
Great.
Well, thank you, Dr. Bridgman.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Staff has recommended that we go ahead and allocate the matching fund grants, and there's a motion on page 3. Somebody care to make a motion?
Yes, sir, that's right.
Clint's got it.
Chair, I move to approve the matching grant for up to $25,000 for the Davies Clinic under the guidelines of the Downtown Canby Facade Improvement Program.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, Commissioner Coleman has moved, and Commissioner Rocha has seconded to approve the matching grant of up to $25,000 for the Davies Clinic under the guidelines of the Downtown Canby Facade Improvement Program. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And carries 7-0. Thank you, Dr. Bridgman.
you all.
Congratulations.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
No, it's all right.
And now, next on our agenda, we need to do a little bit of shifting tonight. We're going to swap items B and C around. And so next, we'll have a presentation by Fire Chief Ted Coons, and he's going to talk to us about UR projects, give us some perspective and history on the agency. He has already supplied everyone with a handout to which he'll be referring. Thank you, Chief. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appeared before you a couple months ago before I had to run out and go to a 911 call, that with my pending retirement, which comes up in about 3.5 months, not that I'm counting, that I have some certain concerns, or not really concerns, I guess, more beliefs that I need to make sure I pass some stuff on before I leave, that would be appropriate. And one of the things was urban renewal, because urban renewal's got such a long history, and as we all know, when urban renewal started, there were some situations between the city and the fire district that I'm glad to say that we were able to work those out and move forward. So what I'd like to do tonight is 2 things. Number one is I wrestled with a lot of different ways to actually kind of present to you guys the history of where the fire district projects came from, why they're there, why the dollar amounts are there, and so forth. So I got that put together here. And then the other thing that I'm going to ask you for at the end of this presentation is, I know it's budget time, and what I would like, or what I would like to seek, is a $400,000 appropriation within the urban renewal budget for next year for fire district projects coming up, and we can kind of talk about that a little bit more as we go through the presentation. But yeah, 2 things. Number one, I want to pass on the history and the information so it doesn't get lost as I leave. And then also that request for $400,000 for next year in the urban renewal budget for fire district projects. Okay? All right, well, in front of you, you got several documents. I tried to divide them up so you can kind of follow through, with me. And the first one is a memorandum dated September 8, 1999, which was kind of after the urban renewal task force put together. And I think Craig, you were on the task force with me that wrote it. And so Craig and I and about, I think, 10 other individuals served on the task force that put together the plan, representing everything from stakeholders within the industrial park to the fire district. The school district had a representative there. The council had a representative there. So it was a well-put-together group, and believe me, over the 6 to 8 months that we worked through the plan, we talked about a lot of issues. The good part was when we got to the end, we were all pretty united about what we thought ought to happen and what we were going to recommend to the council. So I have to say, during my tenure as fire chief, that actually was at times very laborious, but in the end, a very rewarding project that we worked on, because I think we came up with a very good document. So with that, we'll move on. That first document I have in front of you, just really quick, dated September 15th, 1999. I just want you to go about halfway down the page when it talks about, there's some comments on the synopsis. And it says the Urban Renewal Task Force was essentially completed their work except for a presentation of the final Urban Renewal Report and plan to the Urban Renewal Agency for further processing. The Urban Renewal Task Force has developed certain recommendations as options for the City Council to determine the composition of the Urban Renewal Agency and the Urban Renewal Organization. One of the things that was lobbied about, really heavy about, for a lot of the organizations there was where's the direct citizen input to the system, because it was pretty clear early on that the council wanted to be the agency. And so what was developed at that time was an advisory council or advisory committee that was made up of a lot of those folks that served on the original group that put together the task force. But it also involved several other stakeholders. But there again, representatives of the fire district, the school district, and all that. And when the fire district and the school district, when we talked about where we were with urban renewal, one of the things that we talked about was we wanted to make sure we had direct representation. One of the options that we threw out was having somebody from the school district and the fire district sit on the urban renewal agency board. And the council didn't want to do that, and so we had those dedicated positions on the advisory committee. That went along fine for several years, and then about 2005, 2006, there was a rewrite in the plan, and the advisory committee or council went away. So that was kind of a loss, in the fact that there was no longer direct representation into the system anymore. That was originally proposed by the committee. So with that, moving on. Go back to the last page, actually, on that handout. And what I did with these handouts was, if there was documents in between or pages in between, I didn't take any of that out of any of these, because I didn't want you to think I was just cherry picking stuff as we went through. So the document that you have in front of you is the entire document. So go to the very last page, and you'll notice there's several projects. That the project list starts up the top of the page, says industrial utilities improvements. You go all the way down. Third one from the bottom is fire protection, emergency response improvements. It says 1, urban renewal district fire protection, and it lists $2,750,000 for those projects. Next document is one that's dated October 27th, 1999. And in this document, like I said, we had some interesting discussions as we were going through and developing the plan. And if you go to page 2, you see a title under there called Fire Board Issues. And you'll see that the fire district indicated that on October 20th, we were going to oppose the Canby Urban Renewal Plan on the basis that the fire district would forego an estimated basically $5.9 million. Everything that's written here is accurate and true, but I want to skip down a little farther where there's a sentence that after the end of a paragraph says the intent of the Canby Urban Renewal Task Force. And it says the intent of the Canby Urban Renewal Task Force and city staff is to keep the fire district whole by designating an allowable fire protection project activity in an amount equal to approximately estimated foregone increment tax revenues, $5,946,874. And the project activity has been described as the Urban Renewal District Fire Protection at $2,750,000. A present-day value amount to equalize the $1999 in effect. And then after this, you have the Table 5, page 8, which is on the back of, which is the very next document that you have in your packet. And you'll see the amount listed there of $2,750,000. Going back to the previous document, the memorandum from Mark Adcock dated October 27th, if you go to the third page of that document, you'll see several staff recommendations. First staff recommendation was that staff recommends that the City Council agency and the Fire District Board focus on working together to adjust the present and future impacts on services and the present and accruing benefits to their respective and collective constituencies. The next one down there, it says staff recommends that the agency, city council, and fire board use an IGA approach because of the impact of the fire district operational budgets and the impact on the fire district due to further development in the commercial and industrial areas within the Canby Urban Renewal District. And then the one after that, staff also recommends that the amount of the Urban Renewal District Fire Protection Project to be shown at $5,950,000 with a footnote that is an intended maximum dollar amount. And later on, you'll see that in a motion from Councilor Walt Daniels to make that amendment later on in the presentation. Any questions so far? Okay, keep moving on. So the next one, Canby City Council special session, November 24th, 1999, in the minutes. And this was a special meeting that was held in order, I believe this was the second reading of the of ordinance number 1031, which was an ordinance of the City of Canby approving the urban renewal plan and directing that the notice of approval be published. The discussion underneath there, I want to point out a couple things. Councilor Roger Harris, who was also involved a lot with the committee and came to a lot of our meetings. If you skip down a couple lines, he speaks about the issue with the school district and the fire district, gets a little farther, and he says he expects that intergovernmental agreements will be developed to everyone's satisfaction, will involve the taxing entities to be actively involved, and he believed that any elected body would be concerned about fairness and equity. Continue on to the next page. About 2/3 of the way down the page, you see Councilor Walt Daniels in his comments. It says, Councilor Walt Daniels supports the urban renewal plan, recognized the need to work with the fire district and the school district, and that there was work to be done by the urban renewal agency in regards to their concerns. Skipping on again to the next page, and comments by Mayor Scott Taylor. I'm going to skip down maybe about an inch in that column. And Mayor Taylor's comments were, the concerns of the school district and fire district, he stated, are hard revenue issues that can be handled through a working relationship to set off some of the tax revenue funding, maybe by giving cash. He stated other cities have found a way to give cash to their taxing districts. He stated that as with the city budget, the urban renewal district list of projects can be adapted over time as circumstances demand. He said that the list is not the sacred scroll, and that we have the ability to adjust the framework as this sets the upper limits we can go to work within. And then down towards the bottom of the page, he said that he proposed bringing forth an advisory board committee to help us work out the details acceptable to all concerns, and that was that advisory council that I talked about earlier. So you see right there that there was there was a lot of anguish that took place there. There was a lot of air of cooperation by the time we got to this point between the bodies. Next document I have before you is the Canby City Council regular session, December 1, 1999. If you go to the third page, it says Mayor Taylor opened the public testimony at 7:37 p.m. And it says Ted Coons, Canby Fire Chief, thanked the mayor and council for the opportunity to speak that night. The Canby Fire District was not opposed to urban renewal, but they were concerned about the ability to maintain their current level of services, providing services to the industrial park and a parity amongst the taxing entities. It pretty much gives the rest of my testimony there. Go down to the end of my testimony, and Councilor Harris said that they had discussed arranging an IGA as well as negotiated and could be satisfied the needs of the fire district. He thought it was hard to imagine that they or any elected body would allow industrial development and that was not commensurate with fire protection. Go to the next page on the bottom of it, and I spoke to it a little while ago, a motion made by Councilor Daniels at the time, and that's the one that had to do with the footnote. And it says, Councilor Daniels moves to add the following footnotes to the report on the urban renewal plan. 1, the urban renewal district fire protection project estimated cost of $2,750,000 is the present value of the estimated revenues foregone of $5 million by the Canby Fire District number 62, and at the discount rate of 5% per year over the estimated urban renewal district term of 20 years. So that motion was seconded by Councilor Lucas and passed 5-0. There's nothing else within this document that I want to review with you, but like I said, I want to make sure I included the entire meeting, so I wasn't picking just selected things out. Next is a memorandum dated September 14, 2001, and this is from the advisory committee or advisory council to the Urban Renewal Agency, and it's addressed to Chairman Prince, Commissioners Blackwell, Carson, Strong, Daniels, Johnson, and Parks. If you go about halfway down the page, it says the advisory committee went through an organized, structured process to obtain the pertinent information and make the recommendations. We reviewed the Oregon property tax structure. A panel of citizens who worked on the task force gave background to the formation of the original plan and how it was developed. We discussed the possible scenarios for reducing or not reducing the URD boundaries. The positive and negative affirmations of each scenario were reviewed in great detail, and the fire district issues were discussed and solutions were developed. If you go over to the second page there, there was a couple of recommendations in regards to the size of the URD. It was talked about removing some acres, 24 acres on the west end of town, and it broke it up. But also, a recommendation was there that the urban renewal district be increased by approximately 3 acres to include the fire district main station on South Pine Street. That's because, and that passed 15-0. One of the reasons we did that is because one of the urban renewal projects that you'll see in a minute was a remodel of the current fire station, and that was part of that. But we couldn't do it unless that fire station became part of the district, so that's why that was recommended. Go to the next page, and we'll end up with those recommendations. It begins at the top of the page with charge number 3, solve the issues with the fire district. And it says, we recommend the following projects be listed for the fire district. Passed 12-0 with one abstention, and I will say the one abstention was me because obviously I had a conflict of interest. Number 1, at the main station, additional administrative space and separate structure for some fire vehicle parking. This will free up space in the existing building for a ladder truck. And the time frame from the beginning of the urban renewal district was 1 to 3 years. We were a little late on that, but we have accomplished that project. We haven't done the garage yet out back because of some other pending activities. Next is the training facility located within the industrial area. That would be within the first 6 to 10 years of the urban renewal plan. And the third one is a north side fire station, and that would be undertaken within 10 to 12 years of the plan. The reason for the recommendation was to improve the ISO rating. ISO is the Insurance Services Office. They rate every fire district and fire department in the state of Oregon, and we all basically pay our fire insurance, whether you're commercial or you're private, based upon that rating and your ability of your fire department to serve your community. So improve the ISO rating for the fire district. That will result in lowering fire insurance rates for all citizens of the fire district and provide equitable funding for the fire district. They noted below there that we point out that if build-out does not occur or does so in a slower rate than originally anticipated, these projects would either not be funded or be funded at a later date. And we absolutely agree with that. That's one of the reasons why we haven't been here jumping up and down saying, hey, we're past the 6 to 10 years on the training center, for the fact that we all had an economic hardship called the Great Recession that we just went through, and we understand that. We just want to make sure that those projects don't be forgot about as we move towards 2019 and the end of that 20-year period in which you can undertake projects. So that deadline is rapidly approaching. And then next up here is recommendations to the Canby Urban Renewal District Agency Board from the Urban Renewal District Advisory Committee, and the following were recommended on January 10th, 2002. I won't bore you with a ton of that stuff, but I would ask for you to go to the second page, which is a resolution. And one thing that was done really, really well, let me read it first. It says, at the bottom, it says, the board recommends the Canby City Council amend the Canby Urban Renewal District boundary to eliminate approximately 105.97 acres as more particularly described as an Exhibit A attached, and I've attached all that for you if you'd like to read all those legal descriptions. But there were some great things that happened when we finally reached a compromise. One was the 3 projects with a timeline set to them. Another one was that we had a substantial amount of property that was removed from the Urban Renewal District. An example of that area is Bugs Wygant's property out on Township Road. If you recall, everything south of everything south of Township there is not in the Urban Renewal District except for where the roadway and the bridge over Sequoia Parkway goes. That was the negotiation item that took place. That's what the council, or the agency advisory committee and the council acting as the agency agreed to when they adopted this resolution here. And it's worked out great. The fire district received some revenue off of American Steel. Normally, if we hadn't done that, that would have been in the urban renewal district. So the city general funds benefited from that, the fire districts benefited from that, the school district, everybody's benefited from that. And that was a great idea. I can't remember who proposed that, but that's worked out really well for everybody concerned. And then lastly, last document I have is, I printed this off today, the Canby Urban Renewal Area Plan off the city's website. And this is dated November 1999, revised 2009 to include amendments. And I just want to skip into the third page here really quick and talk about, this is in the section 800, or 800, 600, description of projects to be undertaken. In our section 5 of that, it says upgrades to fire protection and emergency response system. It is the intent to allow the renewal agency to assist in upgrading and supplementing fire protection services to the renewal area. Agency assistance will be commensurate with the needs for for new equipment and facilities generated by the development of the renewal area. Assistance may include, but is not limited to, acquisition of fire protection and emergency response equipment and construction, reconstruction, or upgrade of existing fire station for the purpose of providing enhancement for fire protection rating and emergency response to the renewal area. And you can go down, it says projects may include joint funding with other governmental or private entities, agencies. The extent of the renewal's participation in funding such agency assistance will be based upon a renewal agency's finding the benefit of the project to the renewal area and the importance of the project in carrying out plan objectives. And below that, it speaks to 3 specific projects. I don't know if you divide these up into projects, because in reality it was only one project, and that was a remodel of our main station, because we did it all together at one time, and it was funded by the renewal agency at one time. So with that, that was the that was the main things that I wanted to make sure that I passed on to you folks. Was that we've gone through a long process. It's been laborious at times. It's been rewarding at times. But I think we've reached a very good agreement over a period of time, considering everything that happened previous to that agreement. There's some things there that if I had a chance to do it all over again, after sitting in this job for 16 years, I would do it all over again. But you can't unring the bell. And the bottom line is, I think we have a very good agreement. So far we've received $500,000 of the 2.75 million. That's been allocated towards fire district projects. And that's why, in my second part tonight, I'd like to have a placeholder or something placed within the urban renewal budget for next fiscal year for $400,000 for capital equipment. And I know that has to go through a budget process, but I just want to make sure I get that formal request out there on the table.
So Chief, the 400K would include what?
Well, right now, what we'd like to do is use that money towards equipment. One of the things that we've found ourselves in with the downturn in the economy is, you want to find out how expensive something is, put a fire department on it.
Yeah.
Nothing that we buy or get, even if it's tagged on to another contract or another bid somewhere, is ever cheap. But we're finding ourselves in a position where, at least last year, we ran a record number of calls. We did a record number of ambulance transports. And we're doing so without a staff increase. So number one, our staff's running a lot, but our vehicles are running a ton too. In no time did we envision, for example, our first out fire engine, when we built that and had that built in 2001, that we were running almost 2,000 calls a year. It's an extremely busy piece of apparatus, and when you're taking 38,000 pounds down the road all the time, it's kind of tough on it. Mm-hmm. But in our minimum staffing configuration that we're in, we've tried running other lighter vehicles. The hard part is, how do you explain to somebody when you're up on, maybe on Knightsbridge Road on a medical call, but you just had a fire call came in off Central Point Road, and now you got to go to the fire station to get the fire engine versus having the fire engine with you, which creates a delay in response. I will say that that's a real scenario. That did happen, and that's the reason why we changed our model, is we put the tools, the guys back, put it in their hands. No matter what call they go to, they're ready to respond to the next one. And this last year, we had over 400 occurrences where the company was deployed on a call and got sent to another one before they got back to the fire station. And on top of that, we had several hundred more times where we not only had those 2 calls going, but also had a third one going. It's kind of been a humorous point for us in the fire district, in the fact that I don't think we can have 1 call at a time. We always have to have 2 or 3 going at the same time, and I kind of wonder sometimes if somebody hears the siren and then they get excited and go, well, what about me? Anyway, I apologize for that, I digress. As far as the details and stuff behind that, I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time tonight talking about, specifications of equipment or all that sort of stuff like that. I know we can do that at a later date. I know you have a lot of other pressing issues. I just wanted to get that placeholder into place so we can talk about that.
Okay. So in this case, we're talking about like a new ambulance, new fire truck?
Probably for us, we'd be looking at a couple ambulances and some other equipment. The fire district's exploring another option as far as possibly being able to finance the fire engine. So if not, we'll come back and see you again. Those 3 projects over there, one thing I need to tell you really quick, the main station improvement, that's helped out a whole lot, and we acknowledge the city always for helping us do that as the Urban Renewal Agency. We appreciate that. The next one is the training center. The training center continues to be a big ding for us anytime that ISO comes to town and evaluates us. On top of that fact that we really have no training facility. We have our parking lot at night, we throw ladders up on our building. Our building is actually starting to actually have some degradation to it because of the firefighter training we're doing, which isn't a good thing because that's an important community asset. Training center not only helps us, but it also can be used by the Canby Police Department. We've discussed that with Chief Smith and other responders within the community, let alone potential for services during emergencies, disasters, and so forth like that. And that's timed out to be a $1.5 million project by the time we buy land and make the improvements and stuff. 1.5 million isn't going to get us very far in there, but it'll get the basics installed. And then the third project, which was the North Side Fire Station, that was tuned at $750,000. I need to say, whether you're my fire board or you're the city council or the Urban Renewal Agency, if I sat in front of you and told you we need a North Side Fire Station, you could really call me a liar. The reality is we only have 9 to 11 times over the last 6 years that we've actually got stopped by a train, and very rarely do we get stopped by more than a minute. In no business model does that make a whole lot of sense to sink, $750,000, which is just the land and the utilities to it, and then on top of the $1 million, $1.5 million it takes to construct even a minimal station, and then we haven't even touched operations yet.
Right.
That's nothing that we can afford, and I don't want to build a facility and have it sit there vacant forever and be a source of angst for the citizens.
Right. And
So rather than doing that fire station project, we like to have that money looked at as far as doing equipment.
Okay. And we've received a copy of the favorable legal opinion that you had on that, and we've just been waiting to appoint our attorney so we can get that to them.
Yeah, and Amanda and Greg and I met, and we talked about that, and attorneys' opinions are a dime a dozen, and so forth.
I wish they were that cheap.
Yeah. Tell me about it. But I think there's a good compromise that can be reached there. Like I said, I don't want to belabor that point tonight, but I think there's some really cool things we can do that really benefit the taxpayers. And as I've always said, your taxpayers are my taxpayers, and it's all put out of the same checkbooks and the same pockets. And so, reality is we can use some urban renewal funds versus going to bonds for the taxpayers and not raising their tax rates. I think it's a win for everybody.
Gotcha. Could you indulge us just a little bit? I'm curious on the history, why the properties south of Township were taken out. Was that to just take advantage of the incremental revenue sooner?
Well, that's part, it was there because these were, early on it was identified that the Wygant property was pretty attractive. And one of the things the fire district had complained about was not having the ability, because we could take those kind of dollars and convert those into people or staffing or small tools and equipment, whatever we want to do. And so actually those properties and then some properties up Malino Road north of Township were also taken out. And then along with several properties on the west end. I think it was like 19 acres on the west end, between 10 on the south side and maybe 9 otherwise. Those were kind of the carrots, and those are some of the things we agreed upon doing so we could get everybody on the same page. And when we reached that agreement, it was a matter of the agency, the industrial park owners, the fire district, community members, everybody came together to hammer that out. And while I don't think everybody got everything that they wanted, I think everybody was willing to live with the results of it, and I think we've done so for, where are we now, 15 years into this plan?
Right. Very good, thank you. Commissioners, comments, questions for the chief?
Ted, I appreciate what you were saying there about going with real scenarios. A couple years ago, I was trying to make a push to get some funding so we could have a overpass from one side to the other, and thanks to you, I came across your statistics saying it's just not that often that we run into that, so no reason to spend $1 million on a bridge if that's not, if you don't even need it.
Yeah.
I appreciate you coming to this council, because you look up here and there's no one who sat with you at the foundation. And the material is appreciated as well. I've been going through old minutes, typewritten minutes, it's kind of quaint, and slowly making my way forward on some of these things. I'm going to need a little more time to mull this over, and Mr. Chair, I think I'm probably going to have some more questions.
Sure.
Some of them may be pretty elemental, maybe even appropriate for a work session where we can kind of figure some of these things out. The one thing, the two things. One, I hear you, that what your biggest issue really isn't anything we can do about, and that's personnel. You've got, what, 19 people?
20.
20 people now? And so we could buy every one of them a fire truck, and that still doesn't do you any good on managing your shifts and overtime. Here's the question that I hope we can get past, because I'm worried about, when you talk about real scenarios, what the number of calls out of the industrial area have been. Let's say theoretically they were 0, then how do we invoke the commensurate purchase of equipment for that? So I'm assuming that you'll be able to come to us and say, as a result of the Canby Pioneer Industrial Park, we have had this many calls that require this type of equipment.
Yeah, that's pretty easy for us to do. You know, our database, our software is a lot better than it used to be. And you know, just for point of view is, 200 South Hazeldale, which is the immediate care clinic over there.
And Fred Meyer, no doubt, probably gets some medical calls.
Immediate care clinic is, I believe, the number 2 responding to place in the fire district for us. We've actually had an engine company over there one day. They went on a call with our first down ambulance. The patient was transported before the engine can leave. Another patient came in. They had to call our second down ambulance over. They came over, packing up that patient. A third patient came in. They ran 3 calls and never had to start up the fire engine.
Yeah.
So the reality is it's there.
And what's interesting about that is that was something that wasn't originally anticipated with the industrial park. That in fact, if that had been excluded, and we had Pioneer Pump and Dragonberry and that sort of thing, how many calls would you have out there? I mean, the majority.
It'd probably be a normal call out.
Yeah,
and the hard part for us gets to be that issue, and I understand where it is, and we've agreed to it, so please don't take this as a complaint. But, talking to the county assessor, most of the property out there is assessed at exclusive farmland, usually except for frozen.
Sure is, yeah.
So we get anywhere from $7 to $20 an acre on those large complexes, and you consider how many acres are in Fred Meyer's, and I believe that a good portion of that's EFU. So, yeah, it costs me more in diesel to run over there on the call than it does anything else, so. But that's all right, that's, we've all agreed to it, and that's the way it is, and that's why I thought it was so important for me to pass on the information. But I'm more than happy to, if you have questions, look into those and come back and talk to you in a workshop or another session, or whatever works about best. We just got to do that in the next 3 months.
Yes. Our finance director is always pointing to the calendar, so you've got a partner in crime there on that one. The one other thing, Ted, and you don't have to answer this now, but it's kind of a high concept thing from you having been here since day one on this, of what our role is as an urban renewal agency in evaluating your request. Is it signing the check when you come in and say we want $400K, or do we have a qualitative role in assessing whether this is good money to be spent? Going completely absurd, let's say you came in here and just wanted to spend that money on a bigger cafeteria, which you did on your $300,000 expansion. That was one of the things that you said you needed to do because it was at capacity. But let's just say you wanted to have a gilded cafeteria for $400,000. What is our role? Is it to evaluate whether that's the appropriate role Or do we not have that sort of authority that ours is to hear what you want? I mean, because Tim was saying, what do you want this money for?
Yeah.
I'm wanting to know if you think that's even a question we can ask.
I think, I think that you have fiduciary responsibility as the agency.
Okay.
You do as counselors.
All right.
I envision it, that we take part in the budget process like most people. That's the reason why I asked for a placeholder. That even if it's there, or in this case, if it's just there for $400,000 for capital projects for the fire district, that when we come up with that project and we bring it back to you and we justify that project to you, we tell you why it's got to do, what's going to do for the urban renewal district, what it's going to do for the citizens, this Canby as a whole, since everybody here is paying for urban renewal anyway. And on down the line, that's all the really important pieces. But yeah, I'd say that for you have a responsibility to examine any project we give you.
That's helpful. You have an advantage this week in that you have a lawyer and we don't. So,
Well, that doesn't come from any lawyer. That comes from 16 years of being in the budget
There you
office.
go.
same thing, Ted. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Actually, I do have one. I reserve the right also to ask more questions later as they come up. However, the one I do have a question about right now, if you could give us a little more on why the Urban Renewal District Advisory Committee no longer exists.
I cannot answer that for you.
Okay?
I like to think that I'm a pretty attuned person, but that happened with the agency and the council, and it never came across my radar. And I get emails of what all the agency meetings are and the agendas and stuff. That one, I didn't know about it till it went afterwards, because I'm sure a lot of the people who served on that group, and I can name you a lot of names of people still in this community, that they probably would have came and testified and asked for that not to happen. I'm not saying anybody did anything inappropriate, I missed it, personally, that's my excuse.
And can you tell me about when it was dissolved?
It's like 2005, 2006, because I have another document, if you've seen my office the last few days, I have virtually every urban renewal document from the first meeting on forming the district till the day it was approved and beyond. There's a memorandum from the city planner, I believe dated 2005, which was addressed to the advisory committee.
Okay.
So it had been right after that.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Gives us a time frame to go look. Other questions?
I've been trying to formulate this one. Since the inception of the URA, have you had an accumulative shortage of capital improvement funds?
I don't know if we can really say that that's because of the we don't have capital funds because of the urban renewal district. The interesting thing about urban renewal, the way it was done in Canby, was the fact that we built this industrial park and we cleared 500 some odd acres of prime farmland blight. And it was all legal. I mean, in the way it's all been done. One of the comments I made back then in some of our more strenuous discussions was that if you don't build it, I don't have to serve it. But the reality is, it is built, it is there, but directly I can't tell you what it is. I can tell you foregone revenue that we've had, especially over the last few years. The total, I was going to work that up today, and I got busy with another project, but I know this fiscal year, foregone revenue of the fire district's $251,000.
Anyone else?
Not at this time.
All righty. Well, thank you so much, Chief. Sure appreciate it.
And like I said, if you need more info, or, Amanda, if you need stuff as you're putting the budget together, if the agency says that as part of the budget committee that they want to do that, I'm more than happy to supply whatever information you need.
All righty.
Thank you, Ted.
Thank you.
Thank
Talk to you
you.
soon, agency. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Have a good night.
You too. All right. Next on our agenda, we'll move to item B, presentation on cost estimates for Civic Center site options. Just as a recap, some time ago, this agency directed Administrator Ellis to look at getting construction cost estimates on the two library sites that we have under consideration. One was at Third and Holly, directly across from the park and across from the existing library, and the other's down here by the cinema on the east end of Second Avenue. And so Greg engaged the services of Ken Andrews, who's here with us tonight, to work up construction cost estimates on both of those options. He's going to present those tonight. The purpose of tonight's meeting is just informational, as to give us that information, help us to get towards examining the fiscal feasibility of those two options. We are explicitly not making any design decisions tonight. We're not making CMGC decisions, further process decisions. This was all that we had committed to do prior to the election in May. And assuming a positive outcome there, then things will start getting really busy and really exciting. And so, Amanda, did you want to say anything before we have Ken come up?
Just to add that there's copies of what Ken's going to be talking about right on that back counter.
Yeah, feel free to get up and get copies if you wish. All right.
Thanks for doing that, Amanda. Sometimes I wish we had handouts for audience things.
All righty. Should we just have Ken go talk? Or do you?
Yeah, I think we should. My question is do we, right now, Second Avenue by the park is kind of on the outside of things. Do we want to go over both of them? Obviously you can, but I'm wondering if we need to. I mean, if we're really looking at the location down by...
the Holly site,
Yeah.
whether to do that or
I mean,
not.
well, the numbers are here for both pieces,
Numbers are
right?
for both pieces.
Numbers are
Do
for
we
both.
need to go over both of them, or should we, we're really looking
Well,
at...
If conversation is going on for one piece of property, I don't know, we need to go through everything tonight for both sides, do we? Or-
I'm more
Okay.
interested in...
Spend your time on the Second Avenue.
Yes.
I mean, the
details.
numbers are here, we can go over those if that,
Okay.
It's a matter of public record,
What do
people
you-
can look at it.
Yeah, yeah.
We have it on hand. Ken, did you want to say anything particular about the Third and Holly location, or are you okay with just moving on?
A brief discussion,
Okay?
and that it's a difficult site. It represents a lot of challenges for a contractor. For example, there's a limited site area, very limited. So, under my analysis, I would suggest that the alleyway be appropriated in some fashion, to allow the contractor some working area. And perhaps some negotiation with the bank next door to, if additional space is needed. So those are the only concerns that I have.
Okay.
There's other concern from a cost standpoint. I was made aware of the relocation of the power line, which is a substantial sum of money, and the large tree on the corner. The site really is pretty negative. So
Okay.
with that, I think that's about it.
Go ahead and move on
to
to
the other.
Senator.
Pretty much sums it up.
And Ken, I apologize for getting ahead of myself. I know that not everybody's met you, so could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your history and background?
Certainly. My name is Ken Andrews. I live in Newburgh. I've been 45 years, if you will, in the construction industry. University of Portland from engineering and business background. And I've spent all that time in project management of my own projects, sales, and all that time as a commercial estimator. So for the last 45 years, I've had input from the street. I've prepared cost estimates. I've built many, many projects around town. Not Canada, but the general Portland area. So, and I keep in touch with that, as you will, of what I call street talk. What are things currently selling for? What are the contractors doing? How's the recession affecting everybody? How many subcontractors are left standing? The last rat standing, more or less. Because a lot of them have been taken out. They can't handle it. Which, unfortunate in a way, because a lot of the contractors that are left, subcontractors, are overworked, so they overprice in some extent. And in some cases, the quality of workmanship is not really available. They don't have the craftsmen to get the job done. So it's difficult for them in that respect. It's not to say it's not done all the time. It is being done. Things are improving, and as the market improves, people will come back into the marketplace. So I feel that after 45 years of being in this business and doing what I do, basically that's all I do is estimate. So I'm more than familiar. As a result of my meeting with Greg and Amanda, I was asked to examine these two sites, which I've done, as to potential situations with them. And in order to prepare the cost estimates that you see before you, the last sheet in your packet is a very rough sketch. It's by no means intended to be a design document whatsoever. It was only meant to serve me as a sketch sheet to establish quantities. In other words, I could allocate so much brick, so much concrete, so much steel, and from that I can generate prices. That was the only purpose of that document, and it's very rough, as you see. From the planning department, I did secure the maps for each of the sites. I referred to the Holly Street as the park site, and the other one as the theater site, which is a two-story. The basic needs as described to me in my meeting with Mr. Ellis was that the Civic Center would house a new library of some 20,000 square feet approximately, give or take, and also the city offices. So using that, I began. What you have here are two sheets of paper. The first sheet of paper is an itemized list of the various components that make up the second street of the Theater Street option, which is a two-story option. The ground mass is approximately, as you can see by the associated map, it's occupying two lots next to the theater, vacating the street and taking the next lot opposite the street. So the street becomes vacated. That yields a ground mass of 26,450 square feet. Now, one thing I did not consider at this time, and it's more than included in these costs, is the landscaping. The numbers that you're seeing here are based on the entire footprint. I consumed it all in building. But probably 2,000 to 3,000 square feet should be consumed for landscaping allowance to meet the city standards. And because of that, I would suggest that that portion be on that lot on the opposite side of the street, put a landscaping area in there that allows you to pull back the building and create windows on that side of the building if necessary. So producing a little more light, a little more heat load, but a little more light. So I'll get into the way I did it a little further. A few questions that I might answer before we even start. The first item on my cost sheet list, it says supervision and supplies. That number on that particular site, I'm assuming that project will take, the way I've described it, 10 months to build from start to finish. Construction time only. That's $45,000 a month. It's a large sum, but what that is, contractors who are capable of bonding that kind of a project will place their job shacks or additional support, some project engineers, supervision, whatever it takes to run their operation during that time. And my experience suggests that they will probably charge you somewhere in that neighborhood per month. These numbers are intended to be hopefully high, but that's probably what you will experience. So that's the reason for that. 10 months, $45,000 a month, $450,000. It looks like a large number, and it is. Then if you proceed on down the list, it's all the various components that make it up. Concrete, brick, framing. If you'll look at my hasty sketch, on the second story building, the two-story building, what I've done is, basically it's an empty box. The library portion, the stacks area, is to the left of that side of the sheet. That represents stacks for approximately 13,000 square feet. The other 13,000 plus square feet is subdivided between a foyer, an entry, workrooms, some library staff offices, and so on and so forth, yielding for the library approximately 19,000 square feet. And the city occupies a portion of that lower, some building permit questions, planning questions, some local city staff, and just the general area in. It'll combine also two stairway systems for exiting from the second floor, and an elevator. Both of the projects, either the two-story or the three-story, it encompassed a 3,000 square foot basement. Now the basement is served by one of those stairways. I also included in that what I call two buck drops, one on the alleyway side, one on the sidewalk side, and also a dumbwaiter to service the